Hi students, this is your professor and I am posting this video here to I did not hear from you guys about any help, so hopefully you're fine, but just in case, I thought maybe it'll be worth it to show you quickly the things that we need to add in the section. This is for your residential project. As part of that project actually is what you see here is you need to add, the section lines or the section, I mean views. We have two sections, one through the garage side and one is a typical section taking at the front. So here, my suggestion was that on the floor plan, you can actually take that section in here. And by the way, you can always hide that section if it is actually becoming more like a problem for you, although you can also leave it the way it is. So pretty much here's the section in here for the typical section, and here's the section right by our garage, showing the garage. And once you actually create this, which I posted before on a different video, actually is generating those section views. So going back to the section line now, how do I actually, finish it up? There's a lot of stuff that we cannot model, but we still need to add. Like I said, here is basically some of the stuff like the 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 pea gravel, the backfilling, the 4 inches drain tile, and the hatching part, and the insulation, and the bottom plate in here that we need to add, and the rim board and so forth, the anchor bolts and whatnot. So I'm just going to do a few of them to show you pretty much how it is. And of course I am into the hidden line view and just changing it to show you here. So I'm going to go back to the hidden line view. First of all, if you don't like to see this here, you can leave it, it's okay. But if you have more than what you want, simply actually all you need to do is, select it and right click here and hide it in that view so it will be hidden. The same thing as here if you like, and do the same thing for anything that you don't like to see. Here's that beam, that we can hide. The cropping works also, but sometimes the cropping is you want to see part and part not. For example, here, if I change this cropping to here, so I don't see any of these partition walls, it will actually hide my post and beam in the basement, in the foundation part here, and of course also my footing. And again, my reference is always something like this, so you can play around with the combination of hiding and cropping. So in here, the same thing I can do actually is I can click on this guy and click on this wall, and in here and all of this cabinets, and right click and just say hide the elements. And in here, I will hide also this element. If you miss something, you can always just come back and select it again and hide it into the view. And even this wall, if something that you want it to match exactly like what you see in the typical section in the blueprints, and that should be good enough. So with that said, let's start with, for example, our plates. Here, this is part of my wall, but it does not show the exact designation like we want, which is basically here we have the plate, and usually any dimensional lumber is a box showing that exact size and an X across, in it. This is a 2x8 plate, as you can see here in the annotation, and this is actually a 2x10 rim board at the end of your floor joist, and this is the 2x4 bottom plate and so forth. So back to here, this is all going to be under the details, under the annotation part in here, and under component in details. So annotation, details, component, and detail component. and I defaulted back here to my last thing I used here. But let's start with a 2 by 10. So here's a 2 by 10, and you can use your space bar. I'm actually rotating it here, to have a reference point. So the reference point would be here to snap on, would be something like that. And that would be actually, how I would do it. So I added this plate in here. Now in one here, I know we have that plate, but it's not designated that way. But before we do so, let's actually work on my anchor bolts, and basically because I am going to show it, try to show it as much as I can appropriately. And back to also here, remember, this one here actually showing me my porch. I can hide it if it is, again, you don't really have to, you can leave it the way it is, and here's that part also that also I can hide in my view. So it will show what I want it to show, like in here, I want to hide that. And of course I can also, change my, cropping view. And by the way, also the cropping view is that, you can take it off eventually, and just to show it as free like that. You don't want those lines showing into your sheets, but for now, let me leave it on. So that pretty much took care of this here, and we can always add, as I said, I'm going to do also one of those bottom plates in here. So it's a 2 by 4, and I'm going to use my space bar and pretty much actually snap it in here. And by the way, I'm using the right click to cancel instead of the escape. Escape actually for the software that I'm using to record my screen. Escape stops the video. And at the beginning, actually, I had to redo these videos maybe like 3 or 4 times because my hand and my brain is programmed to use the escape. So now, to record these videos, I need to use my right click on the mouse and press on the cancel instead of that escape in here. So let's get to my anchor bolts and detail component, and I go here and find anchor bolts, and if you can't find it, you can always load it. So here's the anchor bolts, and we have 1/2 inch, and we have 3/4 and 1 inch, and of course ours is 1/2 inch by 16. So I'm going to select my 1/2 inch anchor bolt in here, and here it is. And I can put it in the right way here, and again I'm going to press click on the right click, cancel, and do it twice, and here it is. But usually, as you can see, it actually I should not be able to see this part in here, so I need to hide that. This applies to things that you want to hide, and also will apply the same procedure, the same idea, the same trick to hatching. And that hatching pretty much is a region here. So under the detail, you have the region, and you have a masking region, which is basically what we're going to use for the anchor bolts. We're going to hide it, and again, if you keep your mouse on that part, it will show you. That's exactly what we want to do. And this one actually is for a filled region, such as we're going to do the gravel, and we're going to do the hatching for the earth if you want, and all of these kind of details. As just like exactly what they're showing you here, you can fill it and select the pattern that you want. So the masking region, I want it to be basically blank in here. So I want to go in here, and actually I'm going to select a box. It's easier, and just do it that way, and select OK. And it didn't do anything. Why? Because I did not say that I want it to be to actually, let me see if I can bring it to the front, and that would actually do it. So to bring it to the front, that means it's ahead of that anchor bolt, and here is pretty much what we have. So we have that anchor bolt and whatnot. Now in here, I will go and add at that point my cell plate, which is a 2 by 8, and I will use my space bar again, and then escape or cancel, and here it is. So here's that detail that we actually have in our typical section. And by the way, speaking of which, you see here this anchor bolt is going to my right. You can leave it the way, it came out, or, right now it's actually coming to the left. But, if you don't like it that way, you can always reverse it or mirror it. Very simple, use the mirror in the modify, and you can select this part and mirror it, horizontally, from left to right, and it will actually do that. But again, there's no need to spend more, on something, like this. In reality, would it be this way, that way, or even facing you? Again, it doesn't really matter as long as it's embedded in the concrete. Now, let's talk about insulation. I need to have insulation. And in this detail, by the way, that it does not show you that there is a plate here, but, usually, this was actually generated by a different software. But let's actually be better. There should be also another 2x4 in here. So I'm going to go to my 2x4s, use my, and click it right here, and that's basically what it should look like. And then this part here will be filled with insulation, and as you can see in the detail, into the detail ribbon under the annotate tab, the group, detail groups and all that, we can actually, select from those, but we don't want that. We want, one by one. So here's the insulation, and here on the properties, make sure, that you can actually change the density of it. And of course, we want the width, and the width should match exactly with my walls. These walls are 2x6s. So I'm going to snap in here, and here it is. And snap in here, and escape or cancel, and here it is. So now we have our insulation, and we have this plate here and this plate here, and we have it, pretty much made. So in here above my openings, I am showing also, since this is a typical, this was taken out, in a window to show the headers, and our headers above the openings are double 2x10s with basically 7/16 or half an inch, and we can do that as two different beams or two different, lumbers. So back to annotate and component and detail component, and we can use the 2x10s. Here they are. And I am going to change that by doing the escape, and then we can actually also do this in here, and that should be good enough for my parts in here. Now, if this is bothering you, which is fine, I can always add a detail line, make it a thin line, just a nice thin line in here, and close it that way. So that is actually my header. And then at the top, back to annotate and component, detail component, I am going to use those 2x4s again, and I am going to rotate it, and so I can have somewhere to snap, and in here, and cancel, and I forgot actually one. Apparently I did not click on that one there. So here we go. And so now here is my, above the windows, I have those two 2x10 headers. And yes, there will be a little bit of insulation showing here. So, nothing wrong with showing that. And here it is. So that's kind of like completes this part of the detail. And in here, I need to add a soffit. We did not have a chance to actually add that into our, the soffit actually is one of those components, just like the gutters can be modeled automatically. So I can do that, or, if you just want to make it, since whatever we're having right now, we can just do the detail lines and select the box in here, and I can actually click on this part here and make it like 1/2 inch or so and modify it accordingly, and click on to the siding part like that. And if I want to really be accurate, 0.5 inches, not that it matters, but here it is. So this is one way that we can actually also show our our soffit. In here I have also a 2x6. When you look at our here, it doesn't really show it, but typically you can leave it the way it is, but typically there is a 2x6 at the end of your rafters, and we can add that, the same idea, component detail component here, since our rafters or trusses typically come in 2x6s, and in here I can actually do something like this, and that pretty much what actually finishes it up. In here we have not added trusses. We can add these components as a truss, or we can actually add a line. We can always just add a line in here, and that line would be something like that, and that line should be, I'm going to go back to annotate here, and that line should be 6 inches or 5.5 inches, and I am going to cancel here, which is my escape, and I am going to click on this line and click on this, and it says 5.5 inches. And that pretty much simulate that what we have in here. Of course I can take it all the way to my cut line here, or my stopping line, and also I can add my insulation, and my insulation in this case here on the ceilings are 9 inches. So I'm going to come in here and somewhere add that part, and of course I can always grab it and just move it. I'm using my arrows just to slightly move it down, and that would actually be good enough. And of course if you like to increase it in here, and that will be good enough for us. Now we did not add ceilings. You can always add ceilings. If you remember in the class, we added ceiling tile, but in here actually we did not add any ceilings, and it's not tile, it's gypsum board. So the same thing I can do actually is I can just draw a line. Let me start it here, and then I can annotate and make sure and I can click on this guy here, and it's actually 5/8 of an inch drywall. Since our trusses are 2 foot on center, typically we use 5/8, not 1/2 inch drywall, and that's what it's calling. If you look at the detail again and look at what we have in here, it says 5/8 inches drywall ceiling board, and that's what you see in those lines. And naturally, of course, you can always extend it that way in here, and that actually gives you a pretty good detail in here, and you can go from there. Now let me I'm going to add a line for the grade, and that's just a line, and I will make it thick, or I can make a box and rotate it a little bit, and then add a circle, or actually add my gravel. So I'm going to stop this video, and just so it doesn't take longer. Usually it takes a while to load and upload and whatnot, so I'm going to make them shorter, better. And in here, by the way, it doesn't show it, but there's also a 2x6 on top of that beam. So to allow to fasten that 2x6 in here, that would actually, fasten to the beam, and then the joist will be nailed to it. And here, I can add that. You can see that's why there's a gap in here, which is the same thickness as the plate. So I'm going to add a component. And in here, I'm going to come in here and somehow something like this, and that is actually, how it would look. So I hope this helps you with some of the details you need to add. And again, I will have a continuation for this video to finish the exterior.